Hi everyone, welcome back to the Be Bold Show. Today we'll be discussing about the documentary that is called The Mask That You Live In, which explores the definition of masculinity and how it affects how we raise our boys today. To help me discuss this topic, I have Arnold here. Hi Arnold.
Hi, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. So my first question would be how did you feel about watching it? How did you feel watching what they were saying about men?
Thank you for that. I think the documentary is one that most men, I would like to say all men, could benefit from watching, just because it takes the time to unpack a lot of the evolution of what we've come to know as our manhood.
Yeah.
It explores it from a different point form.
Yes.
And so I think it could do. Just the fact that, and in the video they talk about it, just the fact that we've attained this level where we're ready as a society, as a community, to have that conversation where we recognize that we have definitely in the structure of manhood, we have issues.
Yes.
And we're ready to explore that is already a step forward. So now we need to continue making those, striving and making those steps towards fixing some of the mistakes that we've been making while raising
the new generation.
Yeah, for sure.
What stood out to you mostly that you recognized in yourself when you were watching that documentary? Whether it was growing up or even now?
Well, as we've mentioned before, so I come from a very immigrant African background, right?
Yes.
It's very, very linear, and boys are expected to do X, Y, and Z, and girls have their set. And boys are expected not to show weakness. So crying is a sign of weakness. You can't really talk about your internal feelings because that's also attributed to signs of weakness.
Okay.
And so, as I mentioned earlier when we had our earlier chats, when you look at the long term, now that I'm a father, there's two choices that I can make, and the documentary speaks to that. You can either make a choice of continuing that lineage of manhood upbringing, or you can break essentially the process and change things that are not positively influencing you in the long term. It's okay for my son to go ahead and cry. It's okay for him to tell me that he doesn't feel good. It's okay for him to exhibit what has usually traditionally been attributed to signs of weakness or feminine. A lot of things, as they so eloquently put it, we feminize certain traits.
Yeah.
And so it makes it hard for our boys to go ahead and explore that side because then they're being women. They're being very feminine in exploring that side. So I thought it was a really great series.
So you believe that we should, or maybe a better question would be, do you believe we should be raising our children with no gender?
No, not quite.
No? Okay.
I believe the two X's, the X, Y, determines where, that's my personal belief.
Yeah, for sure.
Where you sit.
Yeah.
Gender as a whole has a lot to it to impact, because it's beyond just a male, female, boy, girl.
Okay.
And I think that's something that individuals should go ahead and have that conversation with themselves, with their partner, with their community. So no way am I an expert to explore that.
Yes,
but I do believe that it is okay to have, my son likes purple. And it's completely okay for him to choose a purple t-shirt or to go ahead, and he absolutely, when the movie Frozen came out, he absolutely identified with that. I don't know particularly what part of it.
Yeah.
But he identified to that, and I'm okay with that.
Yes.
I'm okay with him gravitating towards purple and pink colors that have traditionally been attributed to
being female.
That's okay, because it doesn't take away from him being as a person. Right?
Yeah, sure.
And it definitely doesn't tear away anything at me, the structure that him and I are building, the relationship that we're building.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do.
Yes.
Let's talk about the other larger questions, because when you start teaching your child that he can not do X, Y, and Z, as simple as wear pink or purple, as that child grows up, they'll start having some serious internal questions. Yes. That's my take on gender.
On gender, just leaving it. So still having that gender, but more of having both genders express themselves the way they want to be expressed, right? So that's what okay, that's good. So my other question is, we both come from African backgrounds. How do you believe that in the documentary, how do you see basically masculinity influence in the African communities? Were you able to relate to that?
Oh, absolutely. So the documentary speaks to, as your child grows up, they become men that have attributed to certain roles within the community that they are. And there's certain fathers that are trying to deconstruct that, where you grew up in a household that's primarily certain chores are primarily attributed to your mom, and there's certain chores that are primarily attributed to your dad. But then reality hits you and you're older, and you it's not the same community that raised you that you're exposed to, which is the reality for most of us. Yeah. And so if we start early enough and allow our boys to start doing what is generally attributed to female tasks, and we start exposing them to that as they grow older, it becomes a norm to them. That it is okay to see dad in the kitchen cooking. It is okay to see dad doing the laundry. It is okay to see dad cleaning the dishes. All those, it's not bound as opposed to what we were raised with. It's not bound specifically to your gender. You know, they're not gender specific roles, but and tasks there. It needs to be done, whether it's mom or dad. It's just going to get done, and you're not feminine for doing dishes. You're not feminine for doing the laundry. You're not feminine for ironing your clothes. It needs to be done. So let's get to it. And
so I know in our other conversation, we talked about the quote, we teach our daughters. We teach our daughters and we
raise our boys.
We raise our boys. Can you explain that a bit?
Also, it's my notion again. I've observed that a lot of the time we give a pass to our boys, where there's certain tasks in a lot of our immigrant rooted households that are very, very rooted towards girls have to know how to do X, Y, and Z in order to be good wives, right? Yes. Boys just have to just be boys. They just have to know that they have to get a job and bring in the paper, and then that's it. And so we're preparing them ultimately for, in my opinion, for failure. Because if they don't adhere to finding a wife that has been raised a certain way, then they're they're a little bit of an inadequate adult, because they're finding themselves not having that person that they were told would be taking care of those tasks, but they have to take care of it, so they don't know how to. And so they're doing what they're programmed to or taught to do, essentially. Finish school, get a good job, but then your household is in balance. Or worse, they meet somebody that says, no, that's not how I was raised. So it creates a little bit of a shift, ripples in your household, and it's not necessarily their fault. And so we raise those boys to go ahead and just do X, Y, and it leads to Z. But those girls, we teach them this, and then they meet somebody that says, well, I like to cook. I'm okay with cooking. I like to do the laundry. I'm okay with doing the laundry. And they don't necessarily know it's a bit of a misfit, because she was programmed to, she was taught that
she needs to be doing all that kind of stuff.
And if she does that, then that will guarantee her a good husband. But then that's not necessarily it, because reality 20 years forward, that might not be what the norms is at that point, right?
Would you say that instead of raising our boys, that we're teaching men or boys to be a certain way and teaching the women to be a certain way? So it's not we're not just raising the men. We're kind of trying to teach them. I wouldn't say me, but like society, in the sense that we're teaching them how to grow up, how to survive in the world, but we're giving them a certain traits that to be a man, to be masculine, to have manhood, this is what you have to do. So we're still teaching them a certain way.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. And the documentary speaks to that. It speaks to the reality is that young boys are still being told that, as a man, you have to be bold, you have to be strong, you have to be sturdy, you have to know how to fight because you have to be the protector. And we laughed about it when we spoke about something as simple as if you go on a playground and you ask a group of boys, who's the sissy here, all of a sudden it becomes a competition as to who is the least feminine in that group. Yeah. And they get shamed, right? They get shamed. They're saying, no, it's you. They all start for, And so why is it wrong for a boy to not want to necessarily be the strongest and the toughest? It's okay for him to be more expressive in his emotions. Yes. And to choose love over fighting. And so all of these things, they start early, and as you progress, it's some boys choose a stream of sports. I did, and it was very rewarding, but there's so many connotations that are attached to that. Yeah. In boyhood, as you see them growing up, you prove your rank in boyhood by, fighting or being the strongest on the field or the court or the ice. Yes. That's how you prove your worth. And then that defines you as a person, because as you grow older and you start interacting with other adults as a young man, I mean, it can get very there's locker room talks. So there's a lot involved into this macho community that we live in, and young men don't really know how to be okay with expressing themselves because of what they've been raised or what they've seen also on television. Like, because in the documentary, I wanted to bring the point up. In the documentary, they talk about how every movie, you always have that macho man. You always have the one that's aggressive, that talks. And if he's not that character, he's seen as, he's too feminine or he's weak in a sense. So my thing is, how do you think we can either break the cycle? Because the documentary was very focused on how Black men, or I should say marginalized men, are seen. How do you think we break the cycle with changing how masculinity is seen in the Black community? Ooh, that stuff. I think, like I said earlier, I think a lot of it starts, because to me, I'm always told, my mom is an educator. Education starts at home. Right? Yes. Everything is, the base of education is always at home. And I think the structure of our communities have changed, but it needs to also, those conversations need to be real. Within our communities, we need to take out the blinders and just sit down and say, here are the issues that we have, because marginalized men already have a lot of societal misconceptions attached to them. But one of the things, something as simple as a Black man, co-parenting, there's certain stigmas that I have. I've stopped paying so much attention to it, but they keep getting thrown my way about what young Black fathers are or aren't, right? Yeah. And so those are conversations that we need to go ahead and sit down and have, because if you look at statistics, I like to say the numbers don't lie, and that's not the reality, but there's stereotypes that are often repeated. Yes, definitely. And they've become assumed as reality. It's not the fact that I'm not with the mother of my child that I'm not present in my child's life. Right? It's not the fact that I'm young and Black and have a child that I'm X, Y, and Z. Right? I try to raise my child, when we talk about habits, I try to raise my child in means of to always be respectful of especially of women. And one of the best ways I do so is by myself being respectful of women, because we often forget that children are constantly watching you. Yes. My child constantly watching. He wants to be outside plowing the snow with me, washing the car with me, He picks up on any one of my words.
Yeah.
Sometimes I say, I've been caught saying "damn" a few times, and he repeats it. So they're constantly watching. And so the best way is because they want to emulate. Right? It's the best form of flattery. So I'll say it's interesting.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. I was sipping on some tea from the last episode. Join the comment section below. Be bold, comment, like, subscribe, and tell everyone you know.
Yeah, I'm killing them shot. Because I swear God, the fight, we're killing them back. Rah, we go to win them like that. Oh, God, like I know, be a belly jack.